Kia ora, nau mai ki te whare. Welcome to the House. Ko Lui Collins aho. The treaty settlement process has been a centrepiece of Māori Crown relations for decades now. $2.738 billion of financial and commercial redress has been given by the Crown to post-settlement government entities, or PSGEs, which is the term for claimant groups, usually represented by a particular iwi. These settlements aren't just a case of here's the cash, all the best. Quite the contrary. When these settlements are signed, there are a number of holistic commitments that the Crown has pledged to honour as part of an ongoing relationship with the PSGE. Let's not forget, though, that the Crown is not just ministers in Cabinet, but also ministries, councils and state-owned enterprises. At the moment, public organisations have approximately 12,000 contractual and legal commitments across 80 settlements. John Ryan, the Controller and Auditor-General, is one of Parliament's independent watchdogs. This week, the Māori Affairs Committee had him and his team come in to brief MPs on whether public organisations were fulfilling those commitments and how effective those arrangements were.
But I would say this is one of the most important reports of my term, the 7 years in my term. I think for lots of reasons. Firstly, the accountability of public agencies is at the base of this report. This is a legal compliance issue. If you just take everything else away from it, fundamentally, this is the law and we should be complying with it as public agencies. There's also a lot of money, 2.7 billion, and a lot of risk about settlements. And taking all that aside, there's also the constitutional significance of the treaty settlement process and the implementation of settlements that have been made. So for lots of reasons it's important, and also when we saw what we saw, you feel like there are things need to be done here. So I just want to say that the Auditor-General is normally a cold-hearted accountant, but when I read this, I thought, I felt like we needed to act on this.
Throughout the briefing, there was one key report finding that keep reappearing. The redress system is about resetting relationships that should be ongoing and not transactional.
If this was tax compliance, imagine that. You know, so why is it that tax compliance is really treated this seriously, but this is equally legislative compliance, just as important, probably more important in many ways in terms of the constitutional significance. I think the other thing, the second reaction I might have had is this concept of settlement. And I think when you come at it in a Pākehā sense, maybe, and I can talk about that, you kind of think of a property transaction, because that's where you hear the word settlement, where you do the business and then you both go your separate ways. That's not what these are. These are settlements of wrongs. They're resetting a relationship. And the Crown, I think, has seen this after the treaty settlement process as a series of transactions that needed to be managed rather than a relationship that needed to be reset.
Committee Chair, Nationals David McLeod, asked the question of how do you measure relationships and how do you do it in a way that isn't just ticking off KPIs?
Relationship is two parties. Mm-hmm. So how do you give effect to a decent, perhaps not quantitative, but like how do you measure the quality of the relationship?
I think it's a really good question. I think one of the other points that Ethan, you might have been about to come to was the Te Arawhiti was, and I suppose TPK going forward, does some verification, but largely it's self-reported stated. So in the case of a relationship agreement, it would be what the Crown agency would be responsible for providing that status update.
It just it brings me to reflect on the fact that we have people that represent the Crown in negotiations on a daily basis for a long time. They almost become emotionally tied to what the settlement is all about. But then post-settlement, that group of people move on to the next one, and then there's a whole fresh one that actually doesn't have any of that history of what this is, the relationship that's been formed in that. And I do I reflect on, I'm making a statement more than a question, I reflect on the fact that that's potentially part of the problem.
Falls off the cliff.
Yeah,
well, I think that's an interesting observation, because I think what the public sector does once the settlement's been reached is it looks like a series of tasks to deliver, rather than the bigger intent that's behind it. Because you say there's people that go through the settlement process go on I hate using the phrase, but go on a journey to get to the point of settlement, legislation, deed of settlement, and then the public sector picks that up in various agencies rather than takes that intent that was formed here and puts it in place over here. I think that's probably fair.
Now armed with a profound insight from the Auditor-General's briefing, Māori Affairs Committee MPs may perhaps think differently the next time a settlement comes through Parliament. And they won't have to wait long, with the first reading of the Ngāti Hoa Claims Settlement Bill and all stages of the Ngāti Hapu o Ranganui Claims Settlement Bill happening tomorrow. I te whakarongo koe ki te whare. You've been listening to The House, a program made with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Mātua.